So today we're talking about traditions. Since Christmas is coming up tomorrow on the day that this particular episode is being released, I thought it was a really good idea. Well, let's talk traditions and the importance of them and why they exist and why we want to keep them around. So we're going to talk about that this week on episode number 108 of The Relaxed Male.
Hello and welcome to Relaxed Male, podcast that helps men change their relationship with themselves. I am your host, Brian, and I am a men's life and mindset coach who is here to help you understand that you don't have to suffer at your own expense. You can live your dream, and I encourage you to set, then pursue your goals. So join me as I change the mindset and attitudes of men so that they can be the leaders of their families and their destinies.
Hey man, hello and welcome to Relaxed Male. All right, I hope y'all are having a wonderful holiday season because Christmas is starting tomorrow. It's the 24th. This is coming out on the 23rd. And so we've got Christmas Eve, and that's all the fun stuff, getting ready, waiting until the kiddos go to bed and wrestling with whatever it is you got to put together and figuring out why there's, 4 extra bolts that go onto this wagon and hope that they're not all that important. And just the joy, the magic, the wonder, all of that goes along with Christmas. And then on top of that, the religious celebrations that go along with Christmas just makes this time just so wonderful. Yeah. Here in Oklahoma, sorry, man, we haven't really had much of a Christmas, set of days. We were just now finally having a couple days where it's getting really freaking cold at night and kind of cold in the morning and through the day, still, got to wear a sweatshirt at least. And, it's actually getting around to where I'm finally not wearing shorts instead and throwing on the old blue jeans. So, cause I'm one of those weirdos whose mom didn't give them enough sense to where we actually would wear shorts when it started getting cool. I don't put pants on until it gets around in the 30s during the day, and that way well, why should I hop in a truck and the heater's on the truck, so I've got my reasons, and it's just but still I get enough people looking at me weird when I'm walking around in shorts and a t-shirt or shorts and a sweatshirt in December. So, but hey, it is what it is. Before we get jumping into talking about traditions, I wanted to just say hello and welcome to the new listeners. I know that I've had a couple who actually just discovered that I have a podcast, and a couple friends, and they just were like, dude, I didn't know. And so they've jumped on, and I saw that you downloaded the whole back catalog. Wow, man, that is going to be a whole lot of Brian that you're listening to. I hope, I do and hope that I reach the level that, of expectation, meet and exceed that expectation. If you want to listen to the back episodes, you can do so by going to any podcast platform that there is out there, or podcast app that you have, and do search for Relaxed Male, or you can go to relaxedmale.com/subscribe, and there I have got links on as many of the different podcast directories that I could find. So if you're on Overcast, boom, I've got it. If you're on Aural, boom, I've got it. If you're wanting to listen on Fountain, boom, you can listen on Fountain. You can even send me a couple of Satoshis if you want through there. So I've got it set up so that you're able to enjoy and hear what Relaxed Male is about. And if you're wondering what Relaxed Male is about, well, Relaxed Male is about getting that nice guy that's residing rent-free in the back of your head, getting him out of, evicting him, kicking him, kicking him to the curb, getting rid of him, telling him, dude, nice guys suck. Get out of here. I don't want you around anymore. And helping you step into your role as a masculine man and start living your life on your particular terms. not on the terms that what your mom wants you to live your life on, not the terms that what society thinks you need to be. You live your life on your terms. You live life and you become the masculine man that you have dying to get out from inside of you. So with that, wanted to talk about traditions and the joy that traditions are, what traditions are, why traditions are important. Talk a bit about that we're losing our traditions and how you can start some of your own traditions and things about along the lines of having a manly Christmas, and then kind of wrap it up with even share out a couple of Christmas playlists that if you're looking to kind of jumpstart your Christmas spirit, got ways you can be able to listen to some great Christmas songs mixed in there with that. So I wanted to just kind of make it a kind of a Christmassy episode this year. So, but wanted to start off. What are traditions? Well, some people view traditions as being something dumb that we do every year. And no, actually it's not something dumb. It's not something that is tedious. Yeah, there's sometimes some customs, some rituals that we do in our lives that can be a bit tedious and a bit of a drag, if you want to put it that way, to use an 80s term. But at the same time, we always seem to feel better once we get finished observing that particular tradition. Traditions are ideas and values that we pass down from generation to generation. They're customs and beliefs that actually bind our culture together. We have in the U.S. we have a tradition of putting our hand over our heart, standing and saying the Pledge of Allegiance. That tradition, sadly, is dying out in our schools, and people are now try to ask them what the Pledge of Allegiance is, and a lot of kids these days, I don't know. And these are traditions that are slowly dying. And that's one reason why I want to talk about traditions dying off and why they're not, that's not a good thing. We as Americans, we celebrate Christmas in our own particular way. People in Europe, each country in Europe has their own way of celebrating Christmas, and it's just in their own amazing, beautiful ways. Then come a week later, we celebrate the coming of a new year. We start talking about our rituals of making resolutions, and then we have rituals and celebrations for the day we were born, and then people have their own personal little rituals and celebrations. For one, I brush my teeth with my eyes closed. Why? I don't know. It's just, that's how I've always brushed my teeth. That's my ritual, teeth brushing ritual is, I brush my teeth with my eyes closed. All traditions and rituals are based in a set of beliefs, and a set of standards that we have in our society. And we have rituals for everything and every occurrence. We mark special days of remembrance, but we also mark those days that, where great tragedy happened, where, we all remember September 11th, and we have a special day for September 11th, December 7th. 1941 will be a day that will go down in history, go down as a day of infamy. These are what we celebrate. We take time to remember. There's actually people who still go and remember Kurt Cobain's day of death. And these are all particular days that we find important to us personally. They're not a requirement, but if you want to fit into society, there are some celebrations, some traditions that you want to take on in your life. And for those special days, have our traditions for those days. 4th of July, is a day where our celebration is to see if we can blow each other up with fireworks. especially if you live in small towns out in the middle of the U.S. We have a special celebration for the fourth Thursday of November. We call it Thanksgiving. We remember the hardship that the Pilgrims had when they came over and landed on Plymouth Rock back in, I think it was like December 21st, when they landed. And it was, middle of winter, and there was a bit of hardship that went through, and the Indians came in and helped them and helped them survive. But through that whole time, they had a starving period. And that starving period got down to where they got, some 5 kernels of corn and a glass of brackish water. And it was, that was hard stuff. And we remember that, and we celebrate it now by having an immense feast, knowing that we made it through that really hard starving period. There's, many people also go off and observe and hold reverence for the first Sunday after the full moon following the spring equinox. What day is that we celebrate? The spring equinox. I had to remember for a second. And that day that we remember, that is we have a wonderful, great feast and searching of eggs because that's when we observe Easter. Some days they are transient. Some other days are very hard fixed, like Christmas. We know Christmas 24th and the 25th are the big days. Each culture celebrates these ideas and these thoughts and these celebrations in their own way. I mean, you look at America, and we actually go out and we bring in a pine tree. Some type of, maybe Douglas fir or something like that. But we bring in this evergreen tree into our house. And there for a while, we even went off and we would deck the halls with holly and pine. And it was just, the whole place would just smell absolutely wonderful. I mean, yeah, it was a fire hazard if you were putting candles on your tree. But, at the same time, it was the smell and the pine garland that we would string around, and the pine wreaths, just everything just was this really sticky, but it smelled wonderful. And we now have started to venture away from, the buying of real trees and buying real pine and holly garland. And we start using artificial trees, and still they look beautiful. They look great, and they still represent the original idea of bringing in a tree. And now, why do we bring in trees? Honestly, there's a lot of different ideas running around. Some people really focus in on the fact that, pine tree, we shouldn't be bringing trees into our house and celebrating like that. That's a pagan holiday and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, I can see how you can see that. But at the same time, that was a melding of two different customs. The Roman Catholics were venturing out throughout, and as they were conquering Europe, they were coming across the different pagan holidays and things like that. And they were seeing, dude, y'all kind of celebrate some of this stuff at the same time that we do. We can show how those steps that y'all are doing, those traditions y'all are doing, are in line with our Catholic beliefs. So, they bring in an evergreen tree. The evergreen tree represents eternal life. Eternal life can be said to be representing of Jesus and the life that he was being able to bring to the world. And then, you start looking at all the way we decorate the trees and bring in and cover our houses in lights and everything. And these are all just different aspects of traditions, so that we are able to observe a tradition that we've had passed down from family to family to family to family to family. And yeah, we have a general overview that's all the same. For me, whenever I was growing up, our Christmases was that on New Year or on Christmas Eve, we would go to my dad's mother's house, go to Ma's house, and we would sit down and we would eat shrimp cocktails until we were just absolutely stuffed silly. And we would eat all this wonderful, glorious food. And then after everybody was done eating and stuff, we would go and sit down and we would have this monstrous Christmas. And it was just unwrapping presents upon presents upon presents. And eventually, you know, once the kids were getting older, the older the kid gets, the more expensive the gift gets. So eventually it became where, you know, one family would buy for another family. And then it became one family would buy for that family's kids. And then it, you know, eventually it dwelled down to where we really didn't do Christmas, the unwrapping of presents so much as it was just a means for us to fellowship with our family, the Goodwin family. So then the next day would be, we'd get home and then we would unwrap presents, and we'd unwrap presents Christmas Eve. And the reason why was because, well, we were going to be getting some more on Christmas Day, and then we were going over to my stepmother's house and stepmother's parents' house, and we were going to have a huge Christmas there also. And so we would unwrap on Christmas Eve, and then we'd go to bed, and then wake up, and oh my God, Santa arrived, and we had more presents there. All the stuff, great stuff that was in the stockings, and, you know, the AT-AT or whatever it was that I ended up getting at that time. It was just, you know, were wonderful things. I got one year I got a keyboard, and I can remember a lot of the wonder and the magic and the wonderfulness of Christmas Eve, Christmas morning. And then after we got done with all that, we'd have, a little bit of a breakfast, and then we would all pack up in the car, go across town, and go to the Bryans' house. And the Bryans had another just monstrous spread of food, and we would sit down and we'd eat, and after we got finished eating, we'd all go down into the basement, and it was again just a cacophony of paper being shredded as each person would get their presents, and we would all see what they got, and we would have to run around and thank those who gave the present to us. And once then that was done, then we would go upstairs and we would eat lunch, and then we would all sit around again, and we would just congregate for the rest of that day. Now, incorporate when you stepped into your adulthood and you started to have a family of your own, you tried to bring as many of those traditions that you had. So I tried to bring in what traditions I saw as opposed to what my wife brought in, because my wife, she was raised with like a tree. The tree was to be one color. And so there for a couple of years, we would have a blue tree or a white light tree. And that wasn't mine. Mine was, let's have colors, man. And those not just solid colors. You got to have them blinking and flashing. Let's see if we can induce an epileptic seizure in somebody. We had so much flashing. And I was, we started doing that. And so we started using, after a couple, 3 years, it was all of a sudden we started incorporating, we had strings of blues, but then we would also have some strings of colors, and slowly the blues started wearing out. And so the colors started building up, and those lights wore out, and eventually LED lights came in, and we've still had that. Our tree topper, it has varied from time to time, but it might have been, St. Nicholas on top. And then other times St. Nicholas wore out. And so on top would come an angel. And eventually that angel who had feathers for wings started molting. And so that angel came down, and up come another tree topper. And all of these are just parts of our tradition. And so instead of Christmas Eve opening all the presents, we waited until Christmas Day. And instead of we torture the kids. When they got up, they had to wake us up so that they could see what was inside the stockings, because Jana loves to see their reactions to what's in their stockings and see what they got for Christmas from Santa Claus. And there was a working of traditions. And those traditions all connected both me and my life experiences with my past. And Jana, after I had her telling stories of Christmases with her family, there was, I saw the traditions that she got handed and she picked up and brought into ours. And so our traditions are a mishmash of both of our traditions that we grew up with. And I bet you if you looked at my mom and my stepmom and my dad, and you saw what their traditions were, there was definitely a mishmash of traditions there, and there was new traditions being built. And before that, my grandmother and my grandfather probably had two different traditions, and that my great grandmother and great grandfather had their own traditions. And so then it goes back and goes back, but there's always still that overarching sense of why and a sense of tradition. So they all, had a Christmas tree. They all had food. They all had different aspects, and those traditions are there for a reason. And like I said, in the U.S., we do it our own way. I mean, we have St. Nicholas. We call him Santa Claus, and he rides a sleigh being pulled by reindeer. But if you go over into the Netherlands, they have Santa Claus too. He goes by St. Nicholas, and he comes riding in up the canals on a boat and comes off, and he rides a horse through the town dispersing presents at night, and with the help of a little helper named Black Pete. And the spreading, instead of taking only 24 hours to get in one night of getting all your presents, in the Netherlands, it takes several days. And there are other little aspects, but still, they're same traditions, just a little tweaked here and there, shine through. And then you got cultures that actually they incorporate monsters into their Christmas. You've got Iceland, who has this giant Yule cat that eats anybody who doesn't get new clothes for Christmas. You've got Krampus, which is kind of the anti-Claus. And he's Santa Claus, and he throws children into bags and whips them with for being naughty. And so, yet, we eat turkey and ham here in the U.S. Well, in Japan, they eat a bucket of KFC chicken. In Catalonia, when we get in the U.S., we have the nativity scene. We have the manger and Mary and Joseph and the three wise men and baby Jesus and some donkeys and goats and sheep and horses and all these other, stable animals. But in Catalonia, you actually have a guy who wears a red cap, and he's dropping a deuce behind the manger. You got this little dude who's just crapping on the ground. And they try to say that he's, fertilizing the ground. Okay. I mean, that could be the case, but still, there's so many wonderful traditions around what Christmas means to them. And so a lot of people want to say, it's supposed to be about Jesus. Well, okay. Yes. And then we do celebrate Jesus. We do celebrate the birth of Jesus and the trek of life that, and how life was, because, Mary was an unmarried woman who was engaged to a man, and she was pregnant. Look at how dangerous that was back then. We talk about how patriarchy destroys stuff, but back then, unmarried woman who was pregnant could be stoned to death. And yet Joseph stood by Mary, and they went to Bethlehem for the census, and they had to face that. And that's probably one of the reasons why they couldn't find a room in the inn, because that was very scandalous. That was Joseph and his fiance, and she was pregnant, and oh my gosh, and so they wound up in a manger in a stable, and had to put Jesus, when he was born, inside in a manger, which is just a feeding trough, essentially. Norway, I mean, you've got crazy things like in Norway, you got to hide your brooms because witches will run off with them. I mean, so Christmas is so weird and wacky. And that's one of the beauties of being human and looking at the holidays in particular, because you see how everybody does something just a little bit different to have their own particular spin on it. And because they do it that way, it makes that so beautiful, so wonderful. And traditions do that. Now, there are traditions that do die out, thankfully. And some traditions are morphed into other traditions. And that's like the act of wassailing. Wassailing, if you don't know, was back in feudal England. They would have, during Christmas, they'd have wassailers come around. And wassailers were basically, they would make wassail, which was basically a kind of a rum punch thing. And there was a guy who would walk around and he would have a giant bowl of wassail of this spiced rum stuff. And everybody would be dipping into it and drinking it and enjoying it and getting drunk. And they would go from Lord's house to Lord's house, and they would sit there and sing carols until they gave them some food or something. And that's, you started hearing, in other Christmas carols, we won't go until we get some. We won't go until we get some. We won't go until we get some. So bring it right here. And the thing about figgy pudding, that's all part of wassailing. And so these people would stand around and sing. And if the Lord didn't give them something at the, to have them go on to the next way, they would actually start getting rowdy and start beating on the door. And I mean, it was just a madhouse of just all these drunk peasants walking around singing. And that's actually how we got Christmas carols. So we now go around singing Christmas carols, and there you got your Silent Nights, but there's also, the wassailing song and Good King Wenceslas and all those other wonderful, beautiful classic songs that get sung during Christmas. And Christmas makes that a catalyst for us to be able to all unite under our traditions. Our traditions are important to who we are and who we identify as. And that's why if you try to forcefully deny a tradition, people get really pissed off, because why do you need to, what's that tradition doing harm? But yet we have people that actually don't want us to celebrate particular traditions, because in their eyes they think that it's not sensitive enough, and it's not inclusive, and it's not meant to be inclusive. If you want to enjoy the joys of that celebration, then come in. You've got to follow the traditions, but you can come in, you can join. If you don't, then you're not a part of the group. There's nothing wrong with that, man. If you don't want to join the group, you don't have to join the group. We just aren't going to just bend our will or bend our traditions to fit your delicate sensibilities. But our traditions allow us to have a link to our ancestors, and they allow us to show respect to those other folks who actually do observe our traditions and customs. And yeah, it's nice if you bend over and make an observance to the traditions of like what's happening for Hanukkah. So if you have Jewish friends, you can tell them that. But most of the time, Jewish people don't mind you going up, walking past them saying Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and they carry on themselves. And you're not disrespecting somebody because of your traditions. The only reason somebody would feel disrespected is because they want to be a part of that group, but they don't feel they're worthy to be a part of that group. And that does happen from time to time. That's kind of sad that happens, but that's not on the people who observe the traditions. It's on the people who don't observe that tradition. Now, sadly, we are losing a lot of our traditions. Our traditions are, like I mentioned before, saying the Pledge of Allegiance at the start of each school day. That's not happening anymore. You don't at midnight now. You don't have the television stations don't sign off. So you don't have the playing of the national anthem at the end of the day and at the beginning. Now there's a couple of radio stations. There's one that I listen to around here, KCLI, and they actually at 6 o'clock in the morning they play the national anthem. They have a little prayer session that they do, and then the broadcast starts for the business day. And now the actual radio station itself broadcasts 24/7, but Harold Wright has put that particular mark in there to hold on to the tradition of what it's like to actually start your day off on a consistent traditional foot. And there's a lot of other folks who do that. They have their particular traditions. They want to hold on to those traditions because that's what they feel to be the right thing to do. Yet, as we go through our love and our tradition of guns is under attack. You have people assailing the Second Amendment for all sorts of reasons, and what are the reasons, right or wrong? Well, that's depending on which side of the argument you're on. Some people think, it's the Second Amendment is outdated and doesn't need to be had anymore. While there's those of us who think that the Second Amendment is needed more than ever. Again, the same two different people have two different views on a particular tradition. We have our tradition of free speech. Free speech, again, one of those traditions that's under attack. And so that now speech is free. You can say what you want as long as the controlling party agrees with it. That's not a good thing to have. We had the tradition as Americans to be able to have a platform where we could say what we want. Now, doesn't mean that we're free from consequences. If we say something horrible, and somebody doesn't like it, then you might wind up with your nose flattened, or, you may actually change somebody's mind. But to have a means and a platform to be able to say what you want, and if other people don't agree, that's on them. But to have a tradition of being able to say what we want without fear of being censored is under attack. That tradition is trying to be whittled away, and a lot of people are going, okay, well, fine. The tradition of it is all on us. It is our rugged individualism is under attack. You go out without a mask in some of these larger cities, especially those that are on the East Coast. What are you going to do? You don't care about anybody. You're trying to kill us all. No, I just chose to live my life out without fear of a virus that has, less than 0.5% mortality rate. That's my particular choice. I saw and chose my level of risk that I'm comfortable with. And that means I want to walk around without a freaking mask on. Awesome. Don't make me have to wear a mask, because if not, you're going to see me get really angry because I don't need a dead burn mask. It's not needed. I actually, if I can go into detail, I actually think those little thin cloth masks that you wear actually increases your chances of getting sick than preventing it. They go, well, it helps a little bit. Well, what's a little bit? Maybe 10% at best. Well, that means it's 90% ineffective. So, when it comes to things like masks, no. And the government is overreaching. And that's again, our ability to keep ourselves safe. They want to try to use the chant of to keep everybody safe. Well, no, it's not to keep everybody safe. It's not the government's responsibility to keep everybody safe. It is on that individual person to make a decision, to look at what the problem is, and decide, is it safe enough to go outside? Is it safe enough to cross the street? Is it safe enough to hop in a bus? Is it safe enough to hop in the car, back up, and go to the store? Is that safe? And you have to make that decision. It is not on the government's shoulders to go, you know what, today is not a very safe day for you to be going out and going to the grocery store. So we're not going to allow anybody on the roads. No, if the government did that right now, they would pretty much, most of the people in the U.S. would pretty much freak out, and there would be, probably some mass riots. But as they if we still let these traditions get worn away and disappear, eventually they will go, you know what, we can't do that. And people are going to go, well, it's for the good of the country. It's good to keep people safe. So yeah, we probably don't need to be driving today. And that's such a scary thing to think about, but that's kind of the direction that we're heading. To where if your overlord government goes, you know what, you don't need to be talking about this no more. We're not going to change the language. We're not going to allow this word to be used anymore. And this one here is going to be used in instead. And all of a sudden you start working your way into 1984 in the newspeak. That's what the danger of losing our traditions are. If we lose our traditions, we lose our identity. Our identity and who we are tied to what our traditions are, tied to what we believe. And yeah, beliefs change. Beliefs are nothing more than thoughts that we perceive to be true. But at the same time, those thoughts, those beliefs define who we are. And you're allowed to change them anytime you want, but it defines who you are. We define Americans as this particular idea. You go to other countries and what do they think of us? We are loud. We are braggadocious. Yeah, but we get stuff done. We're going to work hard. We're a rugged individual. Pioneers, cowboys are things that crop up into their minds when they think of Americans. Those are because of our traditions. So if you have just started a new family or you have realized you really don't have many traditions that you want to follow, do know that you can actually even start your own traditions. I actually talked about 14 different Christmas traditions that you could actually start this year. And I mean, they're things from wassailing, which it was more of kind of a tongue-in-cheek of going out and caroling, to doing things like having a Christmas jar. And a Christmas jar, if you don't know, is through the year, you get like a pickle jar. And through the year, you take what change you have, which is really tough these days because a lot of people just use their credit cards. But I would actually recommend you pull out $100 every pay period and have a $100 bill and spend it, and all the change and the extra $1 bills and stuff that you have left over after spending that $100, take it and put it in the Christmas jar. And once that Christmas jar is full, you can either start another one and keep going. So if you go through and fill up a Christmas jar within, like a couple months, then at the end of the year, you would have 6 Christmas jars. And then what you do is you take that Christmas jar and you find people and families who are in need and truly in need and that are struggling. They're doing their darndest. It's just things keep happening to them. And you go to their house and you set that jar somewhere where they can find it, but everybody else won't. So, if they have a bush on their front porch, hiding behind their front porch, set it behind there. And you just leave and let them find that. You don't look for the gratification. You don't look for the them going, oh my gosh, this is so wonderful. You just let them take it and do what you want, what they will, because you're on to the next place to drop the next Christmas jar off. And you might put a note on there. This is just a Christmas jar. Take this money and use it as you will. Use it as you can, and because you'll wind up with $50, $60, $100 in one of those typical best made pickle jars. Another thing you can do is, you can actually decide you're going to have a manly Christmas. Now, what's a manly Christmas? Well, besides for having things in plaid and all the other tongue in cheek stereotypes of what's manly. You know, you might have a bunch of wood Christmas items, rugged looking Christmas items out. You know, you can enjoy a Christmas movie, watch Die Hard, or a Christmas Story. But another good thing to do is to actually reach out and talk with your band of brothers, those group of men that means the most to you. Those are those men who are on your 3 a.m. list. And if you don't have a 3 a.m. list, start building the 3 a.m. list. Start finding men that you want to emulate in your life. You want to have incorporated into your life. Have their traditions start becoming in your traditions, and your traditions start becoming their traditions. That, as you grow and you grow that fourth pillar, that man's community pillar, you start having those men really influence your life. Everybody starts to grow and become better. So go out and meet, shake hands, send something as a gift that is very personal to you, to your band of brothers. And when you do, that will help build your traditions up some, and you build tighter, stronger bonds with those men that you actually care about. Now, I also mentioned before some Christmas carols and Christmas songs. And that's one thing that I actually went ahead and added. If you go to the show notes for this particular podcast episode, or you can go to relaxedmail.com/108. Down at the bottom, you'll actually see I've got a couple of Spotify playlists. If you are on Apple Music, there's several apps out there that you can actually use to transfer those songs over into Apple Music and make your own playlist that way too. But I've got a classic Christmas that I actually created, and it's got, Carol the Bells and Christmas All Lang Syne and things along those lines. Merry Christmas. It's got Silent Night, and even the Wassailing song, Good King Wenceslas, and the Christmas song, and all those other types of wonderful. And if you don't like the traditional Christmas, because there's a lot of songs in there that are traditional English Christmas carols, and they're kind of slow and droning, and some of them are kind of festive sounding. And so it really, you go through and you're like going, really, this is a Christmas song? Yeah, it's actually really entertaining to listen to. But if you like the more Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree by Brenda Lee, or Burl Ives' Holly Jolly Christmas, well, I went ahead and also found a list that's made by Spotify, and it's Christmas classics. Great set of songs in there too. But anyhow, you can get to both of those songs. I've got links to them. And if you're watching it, going to the page itself, you can actually just play the playlist through the website too. So anyhow, guys, with that, I want to thank y'all much for listening. I hope y'all have a safe and wonderful Christmas. Be careful. There are still going to be some folks I just read on Spotify where some family, sadly, just lost 3 of their siblings, and they're to a drunk driver, like night before last or earlier this week. There are going to be drunk drivers out there, and I just want to, every time I catch somebody who's drunk driving, I just want to make sure I take an 8-pound hammer to their crotch and just make sure that they realize this is a dumbass move. Because you don't just wreck your life, you wreck the lives of so many other people. So if you are thinking of drinking at a celebration, give up the keys, dude. Don't just hand them over. Don't even worry about, I'll be okay, I'm just going to have a couple of drinks. No, don't have just a couple of drinks. Enjoy yourself, have a good time, but get yourself an Uber. Call up a seasonal transport service. They've got a lot of them around, especially for New Year's Eve. They are going to have, I know our local police department, sheriff's department actually has a van that the sheriff will actually go to in the different towns, will actually go and pick people up who are needing to have a ride. You don't even have to worry about taking your car someplace and going out the next day. You can leave your car at your house, hop in the sheriff's van, and he'll take you to whichever bar or celebration you're going to, and then turn around and we'll make sure that you make it home safe. Guys, this is what you need to do. Be safe. Protect those around you. Be observant, because I really would hate to have the Christmas season be a time of sorrow because you were drunk and you had too much to drink and you ended up killing a family or a family member. So just think of that. Be aware of that. And guys, if there was anything in here that really struck a chord, got you thinking, entertained you in some way, share the podcast out. Share it with your friends, your family. Put it on your Facebook and Instagram, any other social media site that you like to visit. Share it out. Let people know that there is this movement out there, this relaxed male, where we are taking men and getting rid of that nice guy, and we are turning these nice guys into the masculine men who live life on their terms. Because, man, our society needs more men who are living their life and not sitting there being a scared little boy huddled in a corner because he doesn't know what everybody else wants him to do, or he's waiting for mommy to make an answer. So, guys, with that, thank y'all. Have a Merry Christmas. Love y'all lots. See y'all next week. Bye.